Hey Math 20-1, today we're going to solve some systems of equations algebraically. We did graphically the other day. We're going to do some algebraic solutions today. So let's do a quick review of grade 10. We're going to solve by substitution. Let's say you're asked to solve these two linear systems by substitution. Step 1 is going to be to rewrite one of the equations in the form y equals or the form x equals. Doesn't matter which equation, doesn't matter which variable, solve one equation for one variable. So if I look at these two equations, there's one equation that jumps out. Y is by itself. It's got a 1 coefficient. I'm going to solve the first equation for y. So I take the 3x, move to the side, so I get y is equal to negative 3x plus 2. So I've solved one equation for y. I can now use that to solve the system. I'm going to substitute this expression for y, negative 3x plus 2. I'm going to substitute that into my second equation everywhere I see a y. So the second equation is 2x plus 5y equals 23. I'm going to substitute negative 3x plus 2 in for y in this equation. Looks like that. I only have one variable. That variable is x. I go ahead and solve this equation for x. So I expand out the brackets, combine like terms, and divide by negative 13. X is going to equal negative 1. This is not the solution. The solution is the values for x and y that satisfy both equations. This is the first step to get the solution. I now use that value in one of the equations to find the corresponding y coordinate or y value. So substitute this value in the second equation. It could have been the first equation, doesn't really matter, but I'll put it in the second one. When x is negative 1, I can now solve for y. So 2 times negative 1 plus 5y equals 23. And y is going to equal 5 if you finish that off. So you minus 2 from, you add 2 to both sides, gives you 25, and you divide by 5. So I'm still not done. What I should do now is check that the solution x is negative 1, y is 5 satisfies the other equation. So I solve for y in equation 2. I want to check in equation 1. So let's do a check in equation 1. When x is negative 1, y should be 5. Plug them in. Turns out that they check out. Once they've checked out, you can write your solution. Great, the solution is x is negative 1, y is 5. Beautiful. So now let's solve this system algebraically using substitution. All right. So step 1's already done for us. Solve one equation for one variable. The first equation solve for y. We're in great shape. So I can go straight to step 2, which says to take this expression for y, substitute it in the second equation everywhere I see a y. So I'm going to get this new statement, x plus used to be y, but y now equals a third x squared minus 3. So I substitute that in for y, and I can now solve this quadratic equation. So maybe I'm going to add 3 to both sides, multiply both equations by 3, or both sides of this equation by 3, eliminate my denominator, factor this quadratic equation. It's a baby quadratic, only 2 terms, so it factors as x times x plus 3, and solve this quadratic equation, x equals 0 or x equals negative 3. So I'm done step 2. I now have 2 values for x to try and find corresponding values for y. So step 3, I'm going to pick one of these values. Let's say x is 0. I'm going to substitute it into this equation. When x is 0, solve for y. So when x is 0, I get 0 plus y equals negative 3, or we know y equals negative 3. So there's one of our solutions, 0 and negative 3. Or x could have equaled negative 3, so I have to substitute in negative 3 in for x and figure out the corresponding y value for this equation. So when x is negative 3, I get y is equal to 0. Add 3 to both sides, and y is 0. So I've got 2 points to check. When x is 0, y is negative 3. I'm going to check them in the first equation. So we're going to check both these points, make sure they work in the first equation. If you do that, you'll find out they're correct. So write down the solutions to the system. 0, negative 3 is one solution. Negative 3, 0 is the second solution. All right. Let's try another one. You guys go ahead and solve this system by substitution. See what you come up with. Let's do step 1. Well, step 1's already done. Step 1 is already done for us. We can choose y equals the first equation or y equals the second equation and use substitution. So plug this expression in for y. So here's what step 2 would look like. X plus 2 all squared minus 1 could equal x squared minus 4x minus 5. So I take this whole expression, substitute in for this y. All right. I've got one equation with one variable. I can solve for x. So expand out this bracket. X squared plus 4x plus 4 minus 1 equals x squared minus 4x minus 5. So you're going to minus x squared from both sides. They're gone. I'm going to bring these negative 4x over here and make that 8x. And I'm going to take this positive 3. 4 minus 1 is 3. And minus 3 from this side. So I get 8x equals negative 8, or x is negative 1. So I've only got one value for x to check this time. So I go to step 3 and check when x is negative 1, plug it into either of these two equations, doesn't matter which one. I chose the first equation. Plug negative 1 in for x. So negative 1 plus 2, all squared minus 1. Negative 1 plus 2 is 1. 1 squared is 1. So 1 minus 1 is 0. So when y equals 0, x is negative 1. That's the only solution I have. I check to make sure that point works in the other equation. So I plug 0 for y, and I plug negative 1 for x. Negative 1 squared is 1. Negative 4 times negative 1 is a positive 4. Negative 1 squared is 1. So 1 plus 4 is 5 minus 5. Does give me 0. Checks out. Write my solution. So the solution of the system is x is negative 1, y is 0. Works in both equations. That's a good solution. Sometimes you'll have word problems to do. So let's try and solve this word problem by substitution algebraically. Two numbers are related in this way. The square of the first number subtract the second number is equal to 5, and the first number is equal to the second number subtract 7. Create a system of equations to represent this relationship. So step 1, let's define some variables. I'm going to let x be the first number and y be the second number. I'm now going to create a system of equations. The first statement here can become my first equation. The square of the first number, so x squared, subtract the second, minus y should equal 5. So x squared minus y would equal 5. And it's the last statement. The first number is equal to the second number, subtract 7. X equals y minus 7. All right, the first number, x, equals the second number, y minus 7. So I've got my system of equations. I now want to solve it. All right, so use that system, solve the system. So again, step 1's done for us. We're told that x equals y minus 7. I'm going to take this expression for x, y minus 7, substitute it in to that first equation, x squared minus y equals 5, but x is no longer x is now y minus 7. So I plug it in for x. So instead of x squared minus y minus equals 5, I get y minus 7 squared minus y equals 5. I now have one variable in one equation. I can solve for y. So expand out this bracket. Y squared minus 14y plus 49 minus a y equals 5. Let's collect like terms. So negative 14y minus y is a minus 15y. And let's minus 5 from 49 and make the equation equal 0. I should be able to factor this thing. It's a simple trinomial on the left side of this equation. What two numbers add to negative 15 multiply to 44? Yes, you're right. They are minus 4 and minus 11. So there are my factors. Once I know the factors, I can figure out the solutions. Y would equal 4 or y would equal 11. So these are the solutions for this equation. They're not the solutions to the system. All right, to find the solutions to the system, I must now plug these into this equation and solve for x. We know y, solve for x. So step 3, when y is 4, let's plug in this equation. X equals 4 minus 7. Pretty simple, x is negative 3. There's one of our solutions, negative 3, positive 4. Or the other solution, when y is 11, I plug it in, x equals 11 minus 7. 11 minus 7 is 4, so the other solution would be x is 4, y is 11. So check that these 2 points work. All right, we can check the other equation, x squared minus y equals 5. Check those 2 points, negative 3, 4, and 4, 11. Make sure they work. If they do work, you can write the solutions as such. All right. Here's your assignment for tomorrow in class. We'll work on that. We'll see you then.